You just got to put on your project manager hat. You take off your artist hat and you be very organized and you work well in advance of the time that you think you've got. And you persist.
That's Darlene Koldenhoven. She self-produced a solo piano album that debuted at number 4 on the Billboard Classical Crossover chart. And she did it all without a manager or agent. In this episode, she takes us behind the scenes.
Bob said, listen, he goes, you got to go out there and get David to come in the room. Me? You're the producer. This is my idol. He says, if you don't, you're going to get fired. Darlene, put your dress down and sing right in front of him and said, David, you know your sound better than anybody. And I think you probably want to go in and listen and see if that's really what you want to hear.
In this episode, you learn about how radio promotion and chart strategy are learnable skills, not label-exclusive advantages. The best and worst of over 1,000 sessions as a vocalist. What it takes to sing the national anthem at a sporting event. How sonic therapy can help with tinnitus, and much more. Stick around. I'm Bobby Owsinski, and this is my Inner Circle podcast. You've done over 1,000 recordings, all sorts of different things in the studio. And I'm just wondering, is there one that sticks out to you as something that was exceptionally good?
Well, 2 stories kind of stick out to me. One's a very funny story, and one is a normal story. You know, there's been a variety yet in films, television, albums, commercials, you name it. You know, I've sung on it all, and live performances too, of course. But outstanding in what way? When I recorded with Claire Fisher on the first album, Claire is how I was his lead soprano in 2+2, which was his vocal group. And that's how I got the 3 Grammy nominations. And then finally the Grammy for Best Jazz Vocal Performance by Group. Now, the interesting thing about recording with Claire, as opposed to all the other sessions I had done, when you do normal sessions and you're not recording live, you get to punch in and punch out. Somebody makes a mistake, arranger changes the arrangement, you get to punch in and punch out sections, whatever. But with Claire, we weren't allowed to do that. We had to go from the beginning of the song to the end of the song. And this one particular song was called Leavin' off of his first album. And it ended with this F above high C that I had to sing for like 6 or 8 bars, full force, right? That's pretty high for sopranos, right? Or anybody. So everybody but me had a cold during the session. So somebody would cough. We'd get almost to the end and somebody would cough and we couldn't punch in. No, we had to go from the beginning all the way through. So we did that about 3 or 4 times. So that whole album has a very live feel to it because that's the way he wanted to record it. It was very interesting, you know, but I managed, you know, I persisted until everybody got their coughs out of the way and we did it. It was great. So, and now this is well into my career, you know, maybe a couple decades into singing with everybody. This producer had hired me to sing, and he knew of my high range, up a whistle tone range where I could sing notes up there, right? But if I hold a note like up there, straight tone, it sounds like feedback. Okay. So there's a very expensive mic hanging in the room. I forget what it was, you know, but one of the real expensive ones. And I walk in, you know, I'm on time, you know, and it was a new engineer. The producer knew me. He had worked with me before. He was sitting kind of in the chair behind. The engineer was getting his stuff ready. And he says to the engineer, he says, I forget his name. He says, well, are you ready now? And the engineer says, oh, I'll be ready by the time she's warmed up. He knows me as a first take kind of a singer, you know. And I heard that and I went, you know. So my inner Dickens came alive and I sang without really opening my mouth very much. I sang a high whistle tone, right? Held it straight. And he thought it was feedback. So now this rookie is like going all over the board. Where's it coming from? Where's it coming from? You know, he couldn't figure it out. So I stopped. And he thought he must have turned the right knob to make it stop, right? But I stopped. So I waited a few seconds and then I did another one. I did it again. Now he's pulling all the cords out of the patch bay. I mean, it was a mess. It was like spaghetti. It was flying everywhere because he couldn't find the feedback. He goes, I can't find it. I can't find it. Where's it coming from? I stopped, right? Did it the third time, on this guy. And he goes, I don't understand. It's like, I don't understand it. He goes, I got everything unplugged. Where's this coming from? The producer is sitting behind him laughing his butt off because he knows if it's going down, right?
Yeah, right.
Why? He says to the guy, he goes, dude, he goes, that's Darlene. She's singing her high notes. What? Somebody can sing that high, make it sound like feedback? Yeah. So then he flopped back in his chair like, oh, what a relief. But now I had to stand out there, of course, and wait for him to plug everything back in.
Yeah, right.
Well, my inner Dickens said it was well worthwhile.
Okay, let's go the opposite direction. Was there one that was just a nightmare? And you don't have to say who it is. Just, was there a nightmare session?
Other than the Claire Fisher one, where everybody was coughing?
Yeah, right. Okay, that could qualify, I guess, yes.
No, I mean, it's the typical thing, producer comes in hours late, I mean, just weird stuff like that. But once in a while, an engineer would mess up and send sharp, loud feedback into all our headphones and we all be, blah, taking it off. But no, I think those two kind of run the gamut of the spread of normally they were pretty professional.
Yeah. Okay, so you've done 14 albums on your label.
Yeah.
And they've charted high. You had a number one, you had some top tens.
Yeah. I had my first two solo piano albums that I put out in 2021 during COVID. I thought that was very fitting just to do a solo album during the pandemic. So I did two of them. The first one debuted a hotshot debut at number 4 on Billboard classical crossover charts. And then that was in the spring. In the fall, I released the second one. That was debuted number 8 on Billboard charts. And on radio charts, I've had several number ones on worldwide radio charts that do my genre, new age, ambient, classical crossover in that genre, And I've had several awards, best of and, albums and stuff like that. Yeah. And I've done them all myself in my studio. I do the engineering, recording, producing, writing, everything.
And I know everybody that's listening that's an indie artist is thinking, how did she do that?
Very careful.
Not the recording, it's the, getting on the charts and having a successful release.
Well, yeah, you just got to put on your project manager hat. You take off your artist hat and you put on your project manager hat and you be very organized and you work well in advance of the time that you think you've got. And you persist and you double check and triple check and you do everything like that. A lot of people don't start early enough. A lot of people don't know how to persist. Some people don't understand the rules of the game, so they know how to play the game, things like that. For example, Billboard charts, right? That's based on sales. So you have to get out there and sell. And you have to know that, every few years, Billboard changes the rules a little bit. You never know how many you have to sell to get on the charts that week because you also don't know who else is putting out a new album that week or selling that week, So you may think you sold like thousands of records, and you're not on the charts because somebody else has come in that week, and sold one more than you, So that's the trick of that.
I live close to 2 mastering houses and they're my friends. So I walk up there and talk with them. And it happens every single time where one of the engineers will go, listen to this, it's great. And go, well, what are they going to do with it? And they'll go, well, they don't know. They just do the music and they finish it. And it's like, okay, now what? And this is something that happens over and over. As you know, musicians hate to do business. They'd rather be creative. So that's the problem, motivating yourself to actually do the other part.
But to me, that's the joy of celebrating your finished product. Honoring the finished product. That's where my head goes, How can I serve my art? Yes, I did my art, and I'm very pleased with how it turned out. But how can I honor the art? Put on the project manager's hat. Let's go, now we go for the business side, And so, it's hard to switch hats back and forth. But I try to get myself organized in such a way that there's a business period versus this is the creative period. And that's, I think, what helps, and it's only a matter of, a couple of months, to get that in a good way. Radio promoters sometimes, right? Sometimes I hire radio promoters, but that has shifted. Business has shifted so much in the last 5 years, even. Sometimes you don't need the radio promoter, and sometimes you do. It depends on the genre, It depends how long you've been in the business, how many connections you've made, and kept those connections. You rely on asking people questions and finding out what's the latest here or there. Or you Google, and you do your research. How do you get on the Billboard charts? What are the requirements? How do you get a Grammy nomination or a Grammy award? What are the rules, and things like that.
Have you felt that AI-generated music has affected you in terms of your music that you put out?
Yes. So several thoughts come to mind. Yes, it's hot. There's on Spotify, especially in my new age genre, there's a lot of AI that has now hogged up all the space, and it's just garbage. It's not good. So yes, that's affected. I don't use it per se, but and now AI generated vocals. It's like, oh, come on, really? You can't celebrate a human being, because you are one. But that said, over the course of my career, starting with the drum machine, right?
Yeah, right.
That was like the first toy that came out, and bye-bye for most of the drummers, right? And then it evolved more and more. It was software, and then bye-bye singers singing oohs and ahs, on film dates and things like that. So over the years, not the AI, but the software, I've felt it over the years diminishing the quality of what comes out. But since a lot of people, now don't have music education in schools for a long time, they don't have the taste or the ears to hear the difference, or in this day and age, to even care about it, because there's so much overload with everything.
Yeah, that's a shame that it's happening, but there's also a lot of pushback against AI. And I know that whenever I post something about it, even though it may be not singing praises of AI, just here's a fact that's happening, the vehemence that I get back from musicians is amazing. I mean, it's toxic a lot of times. It's like, oh, wait a second, I just stated a fact. They didn't say it was good.
Right. Oh, yeah. We're all very touchy about it.
Yeah, yeah, that's for sure.
We're ticking time bombs about it,
Hey, quick pause. Have you ever felt like your mixes are close, but just not quite to the level that you hear from the pros? The truth is, even with today's powerful home studios, it's the techniques that make all the difference. The Mixing Engineer's Handbook, now in its 6th edition, walks you through these techniques step by step, from EQ and compression to immersive audio and the latest plugins. You'll also hear directly from some of the world's top mixers through exclusive interviews and bonus content. If you want your mixes to sound polished and professional no matter what setup you're working on, scan the QR code on screen or click the link in the show notes. Now, back to the conversation. I really want to know about singing the National Anthem at Dodger Stadium. And the reason why is I don't think people appreciate what goes into it. It just seems like you walk out there and you sing and that's it. But I'm sure there's more to it than that.
Yeah. At the time I did Dodger Stadium, you weren't allowed to embellish it. You had to sing it straight.
Really?
Right? Yeah, but when I got to the part to take the high note, I'm sorry I took the high note.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I'm a very 5-octave range. I'm a very high soprano, so I took the high note and it went very well. Yeah, you gotta have the self-confidence. But I've sung in front of 40, 50,000 people before I did that. So it was, nobody pays you, but they gave me this bobblehead doll for all my efforts. This is Joe Beamel. He's my bobblehead doll, which now I use when I teach my students voice lessons. You have to have a loose neck when you sing. You got to be relaxed, and so they get so Joe Beamel comes up at various voice lessons with his loosened.
One more thing about singing, especially, let's say, Dodger Stadium. Is there a problem with slapback?
A lot.
Yeah, I would think that must be really hard to stay on pitch with that.
No, the pitch wasn't the problem for me. You just have to psychologically shut it out and focus on what's coming here and what you feel here, what you're feeling and what's coming out. At least that's what the technique I use. Just tune it out, stay focused on where I'm at, because the rest will follow. Once you start hearing it too much, see, hearing is automatic. Listening is a conscious choice. Okay. And then once you start listening to it, you're dead, right? You can't listen to it. You can't tune into it. You just have to go from everything that's happening right here.
You just mentioned teaching, so I want to go there for a second. Your students, what ability level are they at generally? Just out of curiosity.
Oh, I love teaching voice and music. Some are hot, big name professionals, that I've taught. Others can't match pitch to light their way out of a paper bag. But I developed techniques to fix that. It's an eye movement technique I call it my listening eye technique. And it's in my book, Tune Your Voice, Singing in Your Mind's Musical Ear. It was distributed by Alfred worldwide. We sold tons of copies. It was endorsed by faculty from Juilliard and Berkeley and NYU and American Idol. And you sing your way through the ear training and basic music theory, as a singer needs to know it. Plus, it has the vocal technique and all the exercises. But that listening eye technique really helps a lot when people come to me. They want to sing, Now, they might not turn out singing like Celine Dion or anything like that, but they are able to sing in tune and not be embarrassed to sing in front of people. So that's a big step from going to nothing to that. So that's one of the techniques. It depends on the level, because there's various levels of deficiency with that. And there's a lot involved, the technique. The singing starts in the ear. The ear has to send the message in the brain, sends message to the voice to match the pitch. You have to have the breath control to keep a steady tone in the flow of the breath where the pitch comes on. So without certain techniques, it makes it very difficult to sing in tune. So there's a technical aspect that we work on. We work on the listening aspect. And I also use a certain type of sonic therapy called audio psychophonology. It was developed by Dr. Alfred Tomatis. And I went back to school and got certified as an advanced practitioner in the program. And so it's a listening program that very interesting. In your middle ear, you have 3 bones and 2 muscles. So this is like going to the gym for those 2 muscles in the middle ear. And the frequencies are adjusted depending upon the needs of the client. And what it does is, by working those muscles, it regulates the pathways to the inner ear, to the brain. So it develops and reshapes the brain into a new neural network. It's pretty amazing. For those singers that lost the brilliance in their voice, they're not listening to the high end. Right? So we give them a lot of high-end frequency. Now, Tomatis proved this technique, and I've done it myself in the recording studio. The voice can only do what the ear can hear, they say, or listening to be more precise. So if you take out, one day I was in my vocal booth, I have my engineer here, and I said, take out all the middle, just give me only low end. It was really hard to sing right. And then we, put that back, take out all the high, experiment, take out all the low, experiment. And it was very difficult to sing unless you had the right balance of high, mids, and lows coming to you in the headphones. So psychologically speaking, if this person is shut down from some trauma, let's say at childhood at age 7, their listening apparatus might be shut down. I can see this on a listening test graph that the client comes that we do first. And I can see what frequencies they're missing. And then so I can give them those frequencies with the sonic therapy program. as well as during the voice lesson. For example, I had a student who couldn't, a young man, about 13, 14, voice just changed. Couldn't sing middle C, could not sing middle C, could sing all the notes above and below it, could not sing middle C, no matter what he did. So I put him on the program. And 3 months later, all of a sudden, there's no more problem. Easily singing middle C, and his voice sounds better than ever because now he's hearing all the frequencies. And he has the more brilliance in his voice. It's really a phenomenal program.
This is fascinating because I've talked to a lot of vocal teachers, as I'm sure you have, and I've never heard anybody have an approach like this. But it makes perfect sense. If you can't hear it, you can't sing it. It's the same thing with mixing. You can't mix it if you can't hear it.
That's right.
So, same thing.
Same thing. A lot of times people come to me, they want to learn how to sing, but there's other issues going on that are blocking that from happening. Depression is one. If I look at their graph, they are getting no high end. Everything from 125 to 1,000 is on a nice curve, a proper curve coming up. But then it gets to 1,000 and the thing just tanks down. Anything above 1,000 is like practically gone. That's depression. So I've treated people like that, and 3 months later, they're off their meds. I don't tell them to get off the meds. It just happens naturally, so they're off the meds. And now the guy has a job instead of 10 years of being on welfare because he's so depressed he couldn't work. Now he suddenly has a job, and it's changed his life. He can hear birds. Sometimes they cuss me out because now they can hear the refrigerator.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of stuff.
Darlene, you just explained something that I've been wondering about my whole life. So when I was a lot younger, I'd say my mid-20s, I had a bad breakup, and I was very depressed. And just about the time I needed to get an ear test, a hearing test, and the test came back really poorly. As a matter of fact, there was a number of people who said, you really have to look into this more, which I didn't. I was too depressed to even think about it. I obviously don't have that problem anymore. I haven't had it, for years and years, but I always wondered about that. I wondered why in that period my hearing was I'm not going to say so bad. It was inhibited. And you just explained it.
Yeah. First of all, it's a female, I assume.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a high-pitched voice. You tuned it out.
Yeah.
Interesting. There is a such thing as where husbands tune out the wives' voices. And I see it in the listening test I give to people in the graph.
Wow.
Just like there's a big drop at 4,000. Oh, you were exposed to gunfire or an explosive? How did you know? Well, you're missing 4,000, just,
Yeah,
so we
right.
work to help retrieve some of that for them.
How does tinnitus figure into this? Does that tinnitus, I should say.
There are three types. There are three types of it. Now, I get it every once in a while, but my solution is to match the pitch. So I hum or sing, even if it's way out of my range. I just go down however octaves I need to match the pitch. I bring the hum, like, get it very forward and nasally and vibrate, So as soon as I hear it come up, it starts coming up and I hear it, I nail that sucker, blast it with the pitch, and it goes away. Probably in about 10 seconds.
Wow.
And it's gone. So the sooner you can get to that pitch, this is where healthy matching pitch helps. Because as you know, as an engineer, like is going to cancel like, right? And so that's for that type of tinnitus, that's what works for me. And I've had other people try it. But, there's things for healing: vibration, frequency, resonance, intention. That intention and that belief is like half of the battle with people, Yeah. It's not gonna, the music therapy or the sonic therapy will do its job, but it may resurface because there is a psychological aspect to listening, right? So once you got over your psychological state during that time, you haven't had a recurrence, right?
I've had it my whole life, since I was, a teenager playing in bands, probably way too loud, and that's what did it. It's actually on stage standing next to the crash cymbal. That's really what did it. But that being said, I've had it for so long it doesn't bother me unless somebody mentions it. And if the subject comes up, it's like, oh, there it is. Other than that, don't think about it. Maybe it's not there if I don't think about it. I don't know.
Right. So,
is it there if you don't really notice?
Yeah,
it's the same
exactly.
thing. Yeah.
But just, next time you hear it, just nail it with a pitch. Give it some pitch and vibration. See what happens. But I was talking about the depressive aspect, not the tinnitus aspect.
Yeah. Now you have a new book coming out, and it's a memoir. Put Your Dress Down and Sing. So how did you come up with that title?
Oh, it's a great story. When I was 3.5, right, my mother and her father sang a lot. There was a lot of singing in the household. And they had me singing in tune. And this particular Easter Sunday morning, my mother had me put me on the platform in church to sing Low in the Grave He Lay. Of course, I heard as Low in the Grave He Lay. And so that sounded fun. And I said, okay, I'll sing, sing. And this song had a wide range. It had mood changes, tempo changes, big high note finish, all not a problem. Not a problem. I could sing in tune, hold a harmony part, not a problem. But I got on stage and saw 200 people staring at me for the first time. And my shyness kicked in. And what does a 3-year-old with a dress do? I took my dress and I lifted it high over my head so I couldn't see. And there I stood in all my glory in front of church, right? My mother jumps from the front seat. Darlene, put your dress down and sing. Okay. I turned to the organist who had already played the introduction twice. And I go, I'm ready now, and so I sang. And away went it. And I thought to myself, singing like this is so much fun. Yay, And I loved it, Now, it was church, so nobody applauded, but there were a lot of smiles. And whether it was from the way I sang or my frilly display, I don't know. But since then, I learned to keep my dress down when I sing in public. So.
Yeah, it's always a good policy. I saw some of your 30-second clips about each one a different part of the memoir, different story. And they were fascinating. And again, after you look at 2 or 3 of them, you go, I got to read that book. It's like, well, it pulls you right in. So I hope that's what happened with me. I hope it's happening to everybody else like that as well. But you have a lot of stories, obviously, a lot.
A lot of stories, personal stories, industry stories. I'm very open. I'm very vulnerable about it. I just tell the truth. And, in some cases, I don't name names to protect the innocent, as they say, But I just wanted, I've had such a unique life personally and career-wise. And the theme, put your dress down and sing, that motto, that theme runs through the book. Because people often think that they have to change, their feelings have to change. Oh, I got to be in the right mood to write or to do this or to that. But the only way to change your feelings is to take an action. So I overcame my shyness by putting my dress down and singing. And after that point, I was not shy to sing in front of people anymore. Okay? So that theme runs throughout the book. Whenever you get into a difficult situation, remember you have choices. And you put your dress down and sing. You just do it. And once you start taking that action, your whole mindset, the feelings begin to change. If you're consistent and persistent.
What's another example of that happening, of being in a difficult position and taking action?
Just one that popped into my head was the Pink Floyd session I did. And David Gilmour was standing next to me. I was the contractor. I hired Carmen Twilley and Phyllis St. James, now known as Yvonne Williams. So the 3 of us were the soulful sound of Pink Floyd. And David decided he wanted to sing with us. Okay, fine. Bob Ezrin, the producer, after a few takes, Bob calls me and goes, Darlene, come in here. And I thought, oh, no, we're getting tired, I hate the come in here one,
Yeah,
So
yeah, right.
I go in there and Bob said, listen, he goes, this is not happening. You got to go out there and get David to come in the room. Like, me? You're the producer. This is my idol, right?
Yeah, yeah.
He says, if you don't, you're going to get fired. Okay, so this is one of those situations. Darlene, put your dress down and sing. You got to figure out something to say. What are you going to say? What are you going to say? As I'm walking back out to him, and I didn't know what to say until I opened my mouth right in front of him and said, David, you know your sound better than anybody. And I just listened to some stuff in there, and I think you probably want to go in and listen and see if that's really what you want to hear. And he goes, oh, okay. So then he goes in and listens, and Bob does the rest in the booth. But that was a difficult situation, and it was my job. I didn't want to do the job, but it was my job as the contractor. I had to do the job. So that was a put your dress down and sing moment. There were a few in the book, funny stories like that.
Darlene, this is great. Let's finish here. Where can people find your book? And there's an album that accompanies it as well, right?
Yeah. So all the music from a grand memoir, and the reason it's called that is because while I was writing the memoir, my subconscious was processing all that memory, all those memories of your whole life from day one, right? And it wake me up every morning. So during awakening dreams, I'd have these melodies, these songs would come into my head, and I'd jump out of bed and turn on the voice memo on the phone, on the piano, and I'd start, working these songs out. So so I call it the grand memoir. And what was very interesting for me was, I did the audiobook. I recorded myself at the studio, recorded and produced myself, the audiobook. And I have I put some sound effects to it, and I put music to it. Now, what was interesting was when I laid the music, the different songs, to the different stories in the book, without planning this, mind you, I thought, okay, this one, let's hear this song with this section, One day I just sat in tears. It happened to be the story of when my dad passed away when I was 14. This was at his military funeral. So I had some sound effects in there, some 3 gun salutes and different things like that. And I put one of the tunes called Lilac Tears. It's in a minor key. And I laid that in there. And I was like, oh my God, I couldn't have scored it better, because every little nuance of the phrasing of the piano piece went exactly with the words I was speaking at the time I was speaking it. It was like,
yeah. It's meant to be.
It was meant to be. It's really interesting how the subconscious works like that. So back to where they can get stuff, please. You will really enjoy the book. I wrote it to be an easy read, right? Some reviewers say, man, you can't put it down, and why'd you spend so long in your career? And then they get through the book and they go, oh, now I get it. Why'd you spend so long in your childhood? Oh, now I get it. So it's all the things and obstacles I had to overcome, how I overcame them, and not having a manager or an agent, how I made this career for myself. And I wrote it to be inspiring to people. I want people to be inspired. I want people to learn from my life lessons. And I want them to follow their dreams and persist and to find what is your gift, because the world needs everyone's gifts, and we all have different gifts. Yes, we like to be competitive, or worry about, well, somebody else did this and blah, 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 blah. No, you have to find your own voice, find your own gift, and persist. And so that's why I wrote it, to be inspired. And I wrote it to be an easy read, so it never gets bogged down in sentimentality. It just keeps moving, right? So if they just go to my website, darlenekoldenhoven.com, so DarleneKoldenhoven, that's rhythmical name, rhythmical Dutch name, darlenekoldenhoven.com, they'll find, click here, click there, and it takes you right to, we're Bandcamp. I love Bandcamp, so we're asking everybody to go to Bandcamp. It's in pre-order right now. So that means you get an instant gratification track when you buy a CD and a free download of the whole album. So you end up getting a CD, a download of the whole album and an instant gratification track. So, and the book too, the book is on pre-sale right now. The ebook is on pre-sale. The official release date for book, ebook, and audiobook and the album is August 7th. And I have over 300 career pictures on the book's website. So darlenekoldenhoven.com. When you click on finding out on the book, it'll bring you to the book page. You scroll around and you'll find where to click. And it's like all these, pictures, Pink Floyd, Rod Stewart, presidents, all kinds of things on there. It's really kind of fun. And if you click on the picture, it tells what it's all about. So I did that for each picture. So
I can't wait to read it. Thank you, Darlene.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening and being in my inner circle. Remember, if you have any questions or comments, you can send them to questions@bobbyowsinski.com. You can also learn all about the latest in music, audio, and production news, and find out about openings for my latest online classes at bobbyowsinski.com. This is Bobby Owsinski. I will see you next time